What if your chronic pain and symptoms are not being caused by damage or disease in the body? What if they're being caused by your brain and nervous system? My name's Tanner Murtaugh, and I run 2 therapy agencies that have helped hundreds of people recover from chronic pain, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, other chronic symptoms, nervous system dysregulation, and trauma. And I know in the people that we have worked with that healing is possible. Now, in today's video, I'm going to help you self-assess that your symptoms are neuroplastic by going through the 15 signs of neuroplastic pain and symptoms. Healing begins by us self-assessing that our symptoms are neuroplastic and our body is in fact safe. Let's dive into it. As we know, many forms of chronic pain and symptoms are neuroplastic. So with neuroplastic pain and symptoms, there is no damage or disease in your body that is causing your symptoms. Your symptoms are occurring because your brain and nervous system has been stuck in this heightened state of danger and survival. And so the first step that I do with every one of my clients is help them in self-assessing that their symptoms are neuroplastic. Because if we can start to do this, we can start to believe more and more that our body is physically safe, that our body is healthy and capable. And that safety at a cognitive level can actually start to reduce your pain and symptoms. So this is possible, but we need to start by believing our symptoms are neuroplastic, our body is healthy, and as we do that, we open up to the second belief that neuroplastic symptoms are reversible and we are going to be able to fully heal. Let's go through the criteria for neuroplastic pain and symptoms. And as we do, see what ones you relate to. I want to be clear, you do not need to meet all of these criteria for your symptoms to be neuroplastic. I've worked with people where they only met 3 or 4 of the 15 criteria, and their symptoms were still neuroplastic. Now, with the criteria for neuroplastic symptoms, we split them up into 2 main categories. Number 1, it's not making physical sense. And number 2, sensitization factors. Let's dive in. So let's start with the criteria in category 1. It's not making physical sense. Symptoms developed during an emotional time. The first question I am asking clients is when your chronic symptoms first started to occur or started to worsen, did it happen around an emotional event, a stressful time period, a lifestyle change, or a trauma? See, all of these things increase that sense of danger in your nervous system, priming it to produce chronic pain or chronic symptoms. So really think back. This could be a lot of different events, like a financial stressor, a big career change or change in your university. Could be having a baby, having a wedding, a family member getting ill or dying, unfortunately. So it's important to connect and think back. Did my symptoms start around a particularly emotional event? Because this is the first sign that your symptoms could be neuroplastic in nature. Symptoms emerged without an injury. A lot of time, chronic pain or symptoms can happen without an injury occurring. And this is a sign that your symptoms could be neuroplastic, because typically structurally caused pain or symptoms are triggered by an injury. And so if all of a sudden you just woke up in pain or your pain just gradually started to occur out of nowhere, this is a good sign that it could be neuroplastic. Now, I'll get a lot of questions. What if I did injure myself? Well, here's the thing. If you injured yourself, our body has an amazing ability to heal. Within a couple weeks to a couple of months, the vast majority of injuries heal. So if someone's coming in and telling me, I injured my shoulder 4 years ago and I'm still having shoulder pain, it's likely that at first the pain made sense in terms of the injury. but then the injury healed and they developed neuroplastic pain over time. So even if you did injure yourself, but it was a really long time ago, that's a good sign this could be neuroplastic. Symptoms are influenced by your emotions. So have you ever noticed that you start to have difficult emotions like anger, sadness, fear, or maybe you get really anxious, and then all of a sudden your pain or symptom level starts to increase with them? Your emotional state is affecting your pain or symptoms. Alternatively, this could happen in the opposite direction, where you start to feel calm, you feel at ease, you feel playful, and then your pain and symptoms start to reduce or completely dissipate. If you notice that your emotional state, your nervous system state is affecting your symptom level, this is a great sign your symptoms are neuroplastic. I even have had some people where it's so obvious, where they had debilitating pain, then they went on vacation, had a great time, and for 2 weeks basically had no sensations. Came back, returned back to taking care of their kids, having a busy life, working, all their pain came back. So look for the signs that your emotional state has been affecting your symptom level. Pain and symptoms are triggered by things that shouldn't cause problems. Now, for a lot of people, their brain starts to make these wild associations where things like time of day, days of the week, weather, smells, sounds, certain environments, certain people start to trigger their chronic symptoms. And this doesn't make physical sense. If there are things that are really not related to your body that are setting off your pain and symptoms, what's happened is your brain has started to make errors. It started to make incorrect associations, linking, for example, 12 p.m. every day with chronic back pain. If you notice these trends, it's a great sign that your body is actually healthy and capable. Now, luckily, using the approach that I teach clients, you can break these associations and over time live a very full, vibrant life. Inconsistency. Structurally caused pain and symptoms are very consistent in how they present, where you always have pain in one location and it's about the same level, or the same thing will trigger it to about the same level each and every time. But if you start to notice inconsistency in how your pain and symptoms present, it is a sign your symptoms are neuroplastic. So an example of this is sometimes your pain's there and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're having fatigue and other times you're completely fine. That's inconsistency. You also might notice inconsistency in the intensity level. I had this a lot where I could go for a walk and sometimes I'd have a 2 out of 10 intensity back pain. And other times I go for a walk and it'd be an 8. So it's like the same trigger is causing this wild variation in intensity level. So look out for inconsistency because neuroplastic symptoms are typically pretty inconsistent in the way they present. Spread and movement. Now this really freaks people out and confuses them. Over their chronic pain or symptom journey, they notice their symptoms will spread from a small area to a large area, or almost like ping pongs around their body. Like one day they have shoulder pain, the next day they have dizziness, the next day they have a migraine. So there's a lot of spreading and movement that takes place. Now, even though this freaks you out, which I totally get why, it's a great sign it's neuroplastic in nature. Because neuroplastic pain and symptoms, when they go untreated, they start to spread and move around. Now, another thing to look out for is as you start the healing work, I notice a good sign a person's moving in the right direction is their symptoms start to go haywire at first. They spread or move around the body, or they used to have shoulder pain, but all of a sudden that's healed and now they have a headache and then that goes away and now they have knee pain. So there's a lot of movement that can take place as you're starting to do the healing work. Please know that's normal and don't panic too much if that occurs. Multiple symptoms. If you have multiple symptoms in your body that your doctors are having difficulty explaining, it is likely due to sensitization in your brain and nervous system. Typically, when there's a problem with the body or there's an injury, the symptoms are going to be pretty located to a certain spot, or at least be the same type of symptom and sensation. But if you're having multiple symptoms all over the place, this is what happens as your brain and nervous system sensitizes. Your whole system becomes sensitized. And so when people treat neuroplastic symptoms using a physical approach, first off, it doesn't work very well. It's unsuccessful. And then what will happen is new symptoms will start to pop up. So by the time someone comes to see me, a lot of people have like 3 or 4 different symptoms that doctors are having a hard time explaining physically. And it's a great sign that your symptoms are neuroplastic and reversible. Delayed onset. So this is a great thing to look out for. If you engage in a physical activity, or you play a sport, or you do some exercise, and you feel great in the moment, you don't feel much pain or symptoms at all. And then hours later or the next day, all of a sudden you're having flares of pain and symptoms. This is how neuroplastic symptoms behave. They can often have this delayed onset. You have to understand that if there's something physically wrong with your body and you are doing a movement or an activity that's aggravating that, you're going to feel it right in the moment. But with neuroplastic symptoms, people get this delayed onset and they're very confused. I remember once in a while, I would get up the courage to go work out. When I had no business working out, I was almost bedbound, but I'd get confident. I'd be like, go work out. One time I did a back and bicep workout. I felt great in the moment. I felt strong. The next day I felt like I was hit by a train. And I remember at the time being very confused, like, what is happening? I felt great in the moment, and now I feel terrible. And when I learned about neuroplastic pain, I started to understand, this delayed onset is a criteria for neuroplastic pain. Unsuccessful physical diagnosis and treatment. So if you have gone to several doctors and specialists, and you've done all the assessments, tests, and scans, and they're having a hard time diagnosing you with a physical condition, this could be a sign that this is more brain and nervous system issue that's happening for you. Also, if you have done so many physical treatments, perhaps you've done medication, physio, chiro, you've maybe done injections or perhaps even a surgery, and you're not seeing your symptoms get better, it means that you're probably treating the wrong thing. So if physical treatments haven't worked for an extended period of time, we got to move from treating the physical body to treating the brain and nervous system. Now let's move on to category 2, sensitization factors. Sensitization factors are factors that increase a sense of danger in your nervous system. And as that sense of danger increases over the course of your life, eventually it's going to get high enough that your nervous system is going to sensitize and start to produce chronic pain or chronic symptoms. Let's dive into these. Do you feel like you're always stuck in states of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or shutdown? I would say the vast majority of clients that I work with, they are caught in one of these dysregulated states, and they've been there for weeks, months, or even years. If you are constantly in a dysregulated state, this is going to increase that danger level and increase the likelihood that your nervous system is going to sensitize. Childhood adversity, experiencing abuse, neglect, bullying, or being in an accident when you are a child causes you to feel unsafe in your body and your external world. We know through research definitively that there is a huge connection between someone experiencing childhood adversity and later in life developing chronic pain and chronic symptoms. See, these adverse events earlier in life cause us to feel constantly unsafe, even years later when we're an adult. Trauma. You are about 2.7 times more likely to develop widespread chronic pain, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, IBS, or other physical symptoms if you have faced trauma in your life. We know there's such a huge correlation between trauma and chronic symptoms. And I want you to understand that even if the traumatic event that happened to you happened 20 years ago, it is still affecting your nervous system in the present moment if you have not treated and processed your trauma. And so trauma is a huge sensitization factor that can lead to chronic pain and chronic symptoms. Sensitization and medical trauma. These two forms of trauma can very much fuel chronic pain and symptoms. Now, sensitization trauma is a term that we came up with at our clinic. What this means is people develop trauma from the onset, progression, or life impacts of having chronic pain and symptoms. The pain and symptoms themselves start to become traumatic. And this makes a lot of sense. With most of my clients, I'm helping them process the trauma that's occurred around having chronic pain and symptoms. And by doing that, they start to get better. Now, medical trauma happens from scary medical procedures, treatments, or surgeries. This is very overwhelming to our nervous system. And when we've had chronic pain and symptoms, we have so much medical interaction with the medical community. And so it makes sense that a lot of people, they develop medical trauma. And in order to heal, we need to identify, oh, I do have sensitization trauma. I do have medical trauma. This is fueling my chronic symptoms. And then we need to do the work to start to process those traumatic events. Social danger. Chronically dangerous and oppressive social factors can fuel chronic pain and symptoms. The research shows us that you are much more likely to develop chronic pain or chronic symptoms if you face social danger. Now, this could look like bullying, poverty, abuse in relationships, or facing discrimination from being in a minority group. Social danger greatly affects our nervous system and can produce very real pain and symptoms. Pathological views of the body. When we have chronic pain and symptoms, we have so much medical interaction. So we see all these specialists, these medical providers, these doctors, and we're told there's all these different things wrong with our body. All these different abnormalities could be causing our symptoms. What this does for people is it fuels this sense of danger and fear about their body. A lot of times when people finally come to see me, they view their body as broken, damaged, and basically incurable. They're never going to get better. And so we have this pathological view of our body that we need to shift over time in order to heal. We know from studies that if people view their body as broken or damaged and really fear their pain and symptoms, they are much more likely to have their pain and symptoms maintain or become worse. So we need to start to change the thoughts and beliefs about our body to actually get better. So these are the 15 criteria for neuroplastic pain and symptoms. What we need to do is start to see how we relate to these criteria. And what I would do after this video is just point form, write down a list of all the criteria that you met. Start to gather some of that up so that you can increase the belief that your symptoms are in fact neuroplastic in nature and that you can heal using this approach. Remember, healing starts by us starting to understand that our body is healthy and capable, that there's no damage or disease, that our symptoms are neuroplastic, and we can reverse them. So I hope this video was helpful. Please put your questions, comments down below, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.